Mary here. Today we are going to do lesson number 6 in our Eat More Plants program. As you know, with these lessons we try to answer questions. So the question that we are answering today, we started answering last week, and it is, how does eating a plant-rich diet help our environment and help our planet? And to answer that, we need to understand some concepts. We need to understand energy transfer, food chain science, which we talked about last week. We need to understand livestock greenhouse gas emissions, which we're going to talk about today, and tropical deforestation. So today our focus is livestock greenhouse gas emissions. And we know about greenhouse gas emissions from our lesson, but burping, belching, farting, animals create greenhouse gases. In fact, especially beef. Farmed livestock are responsible for 14.5% of emissions related to human activity. And cows are the largest part of that. So when a cow burps or belches or farts, they create methane. And we know from our greenhouse gas emissions that methane has 30 times more warming potential than CO2. Also, cow urine creates nitrous oxide, which we know has 300 times more global warming potential than CO2. So, yeah, that's not good. Those gases are really impactful. The good news, there is good news though. The good news is that scientists have been working on this. They're trying different things in animal feed to help reduce the amount of belching and burping and farting. Studies have shown that adding garlic to cow feed can reduce their methane emissions by 50%. And recent studies have shown that by taking 0.4% of their feed and changing it to red seaweed, yes, seaweed from the ocean, seaweed, adding that to livestock feed, cows will reduce their methane emission by 90%. So that is really great news. I don't know about you, but that makes me a little curious. Would red seaweed help people's farts? I might know a few people who could benefit from that. Anyways, let's move on to the art lesson, which celebrates and highlights burping Bessy, which is burping cows or farting cows. We're gonna draw and paint their portraits, and they are going to have little word bubbles too. So it's gonna be a beautiful project, but also a fun and kind of funny project. All right, let's get to the artwork. All right, here is what you're going to create today. This is burping Bessy, and you can see she has a word bubble that says burp, and I call her Bessy. Then we have Frank, and his word bubble says, what do you call someone who never farts? A private tutor. I thought that was kind of funny. And then last we have, I call her Matilda, and she has the classic word bubble that we have all said, she who smelt it, dealt it. All right, so that's what we're gonna end up with. You're gonna just do one, but I, of course, had some fun. I did a few. So we need to start out with our supplies, gathering our supplies. All right, you need a pencil because you're gonna do you're gonna roughly draw the portrait first so you can erase to get it just how you want it. You're gonna need a 9 by 6 inch piece of watercolor paper. And remember, watercolor paper, there's this one side that's rougher than the other, and the side with texture that's rougher is the side that you're gonna do your art on. You're gonna need a 3 by 3 piece of watercolor paper for your word bubble. You're gonna need oil pastels, that's the outline of the portrait of your cow. You're gonna need a watercolor set, that's the color of the background and coloring in the cow. And it's best if you have a small paintbrush and a large paintbrush. You're going to need a black color pencil to write your joke or one-liner in your word bubble. You're going to need glue and scissors you're gonna need scissors to cut out your word bubble and glue to put it onto your piece of art. And you're gonna need a little piece of goose paper about 3 inches by 1 inch, and that's how you're gonna attach your word bubble to your cow portrait. And I'll show you how you fold it so your word bubble pops out a little bit, so it's a little bit 3D. All right, so that is everything you need to get started. Here is step-by-step instructions on how to draw your cow portrait. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because afterwards we're going to do it together on my dry erase board. So the first thing you want to do is orient your paper landscape. This example is oriented portrait. We want landscape long ways so we have room for that word bubble. So first you find the center, and you do that by drawing a line vertically about, well, as close as you can get to halfway, and then horizontally halfway, and you find center and draw that line very lightly. Then you do a rectangle, not super little, with curved edges for its nose, and then you draw its lip underneath, and you draw 2 lines going from the corner of its nose up to the center line. Then you go ahead and finish the light bulb shape, go up and all the way around. Then you add ears, and you add the forehead center lines, 2 football-shaped eyes, and don't hesitate to make those eyes pretty big. Don't hesitate to make those ears pretty big. You want to fill up the paper. You put circles in the middle of the eyes. You make some color spots on the body, and then last you do some tuft of hair on the forehead, and that can be going up high, that can be bangs, and you saw on Matilda that I put flowers there. All right, we've got my dry erase board. We're ready to start. Your paper orientation is landscape, and then very lightly, do it now with your pencil, draw your center lines to find center. Okay, and next I'm going to do her nose, which is a rectangle with rounded edges. And then I'm going to do her bottom lip, which is a little rectangle. And then remember, we have those lines going up to the center line from the corners of her nose. And then we complete it with a light bulb shape. It goes almost to the top. Now that is not centered. So I'm going to try again, and that's why you're using pencil. I start this way, go up and around. There we go, that's more what I'm looking for. And then the next step is to draw the forehead lines, which go a little bit in from the corner and curve out at the top. A little bit in and curve out. Then next you do the ears, which again I said don't be hesitant. Cows actually have pretty good size ears. That might be a little big. There we go. I'm gonna make that one a little smaller. And there's my cow ears. Then next is football eyes, and I really like big eyes on my cows, so I went even really proportionally even bigger than the example. And you put a circle on the inside. There you go. And you want to do some before we move to the body markings, you want to put kidney bean shapes inside the nose for the nostrils. I didn't talk about that, but I'm going to do my little kidney beans for the nostrils. All right, and you can add some designer touches. You can add some eyelashes, which I did for Matilda, or maybe I did it for Bessy. Bessy, I put some eyelashes, which gives her some personality. Now you can do a tuft of hair going up like this, or you can have, on Bessy, I made her a little more subtle. She has some bangs hanging down like that. Erase that line. Or on Matilda, I made some fabulous flowers for her. you want. All right, so now I've got my portrait. What I need next is to decide about my body. Now, you can either have just the body being forward like this with 2 lines coming down from about middle line. And that's how Frank is. Or you can have more of the body show, which is how Bessy is. And the way you'd have more of the body show is you take, just depending on which side you want to have the body. I want to have the body over here. So I'm going to start about halfway and make that arch. And then I'm going to go up higher than you would think. Actually, on Bessy, I kind of start from right there. And there she is. Okay, I forgot something. I want to talk about the spots. You can choose to have a spotty cow. And I didn't do that for all of them. You see Matilda, I did not put spots on her, but I did on the other 2. And the spots are just, I don't think you should put them on their head. Their head is going to be 2 colors. There's going to be the forehead center. It'll be 1 color, and the second color will be the sides, both sides. And the ears will be 1 color. But on the body, you've got quite a bit of space, and just make kind of blobby marks that can be the second color. And see what you like. You can always erase them if they seem too big or not quite right, but that's how you can have another spot for a second color and make it kind of look more like a cow. And that is the outline of the portrait that you're going to do in pencil first. So once you've got it how you want it in pencil, you're going to go over that outline in oil pastel. But we need to talk about our color plan, because these things we don't just decide on the fly. We make a strategy and we think about our palette and we think about what's going to look good together. So our color plan, you want to start with the body and the head. And the body and head is, you're going to pick 2 colors that you think work together really well. Now you can go traditional like we did with Frank, which is black and white. You could go tonal like I did with Bessy, which was light green and dark green. Remember that? Or you could go an all warm palette or an all light colored palette, which for Matilda, I did a warm palette using orange and pink. So you want to think about what looks good together, what colors look good together, and you can use the back of your watercolor paper and test, put 2 color combinations together and see what you think, how they look. And then you're going to pick, and then next, the nose and the eyes are always going to be the same color, no matter what 2 colors you chose for the head and the body. The nose is always going to be pink, and the inside of the eyes are always going to be black. Okay? And then next you're going to pick out what your outline color is going to be. So your outline color, you want to be different than the 2 colors you chose for the body. Put this over here for now. So you want it to show up. So on Frank, I thought the black and white wasn't super exciting, so I wanted some pop. So that's why I used the electric blue on Frank's outline. Now, for Bessy, I thought the greens together were beautiful. So I wanted visually to see those greens and not notice so much the outline. So I picked a yellow oil pastel for the outline because I really like the greens together. And then for Matilda, I also really like the pink and the orange together. So I picked a lighter blue because I didn't want the outline to really grab your eye. I wanted it to be there, but I really wanted the viewer to see the pink and the orange together. So really think, again, take the back of your paper, take your 2 colors that you've decided are going to be your body colors for watercolor, put them together, and then try different oil pastel colors next to it to see how they're going to work together before you dive in. All right. So, like I said, you're going to take the outline, your oil pastel, and draw over the pencil lines first before you start watercolor. Now, for watercolor, I have some tips. before you start. And this is my list of watercolor tips. Oh, you know what? I skipped something. The background color. I forgot about the fourth color that you're going to use. I want to talk about that before I get into watercoloring tips. So for each of these, I picked a different background than the body color combination. So again, I thought the black and white were kind of mild, so I picked a red, which really makes it pop. For Bessy, no, this is Matilda. I picked yellow, staying with the warm color combination of her head and body. I thought yellow looked good, and it wasn't too busy with all the flowers. And then I picked purple. Sorry, that was Matilda. Anyways, this is Bessy. And I picked purple for her background because I thought the purple looked beautiful with the green, the two greens. And I didn't initially think purple, but when I just started doing my samples together, I'm like, oh, I'll just try purple. And it looked great together. Sometimes you don't know until you actually do a sample. All right, so you need a fourth color for the background. So tips for watercoloring. So here are my tips. There you go. Use rough side up. We talked about that. Think about your brush size. Are you going to use a large brush for the background? Yes. Are you going to use a small brush when you're doing the eyes? Yes. Don't use too much water. That is something that if you want vibrant colors, if you put a ton of water into the little circle on your palette, it really waters down the color. So start out with just a little, dip your brush halfway in your water cup. Only, not the whole brush, just do half of the brush part in and put that on the palette and try that and see how it works. You may need to add some more, but be really conservative with how much water you're putting on the palette. My next tip is clean the brush. Don't just swish it around in the water. Swish it around in the water and get yourself, I didn't say this in the supplies, but this is like part of a t-shirt. And dry it off in between colors, because you'll be surprised. Even if when you put it in the water, then you dry it, you'll see a little bit of the color still comes off. So that helps clean it. So in between colors, it's really important to clean your brush. That way the clarity of color stays pure when you move to the next color. And then the last thing is you might need to do 2 layers, like let one layer of color dry, and then go back with that same color and go over it one more time. That's how you get the vibrancy of the color. So those are my watercolor tips. So get your brushes, get your water cup, get your rag, and paint your cows. Okay, so while our portraits are drying, we're going to move to the word bubble step. So remember I said you need a 3x3 piece of watercolor paper too. So here I have my 3x3 piece of watercolor paper. And I'm going to draw the outline, the shape of my word bubble. And you could just do something as simple as a circle or a rectangle. I wanted to get some ideas, so I did a little research. And I have some word bubble idea sheets. So there's one. Lots of fun ideas. Different sizes, depending on what your joke or one-liner is. There's a couple more basic ones. So once you decide which one you like, you're going to outline it on your 3x3 piece of watercolor paper in pencil. But before you just dive in and choose one, think about the composition of your piece. So this is what I mean. Frank seemed pretty serious, and I thought a rectangle would work with that composition. Now, Matilda has all these curves in the composition with the flowers, curves going around the flowers. So I thought a word bubble that has curves in it, that looks kind of like a cloud, would work well with the composition. And then last, Bessy is almost filling the page, so I wanted her word bubble, so it's pretty crowded, there's a lot going on, so I wanted her word bubble to be really simple, and you notice it pops off the page, which is fine. So really give some thought to your composition before you pick the shape of your word bubble. Now, So once you've outlined in pencil your word bubble on your piece of paper, you need to think about what you're going to put inside of it. So you probably already know lots of fart jokes or one-liners about burps, but I did an idea sheet for you. So in case you don't have any ideas, these are some that I found that I thought were really funny. You can refer back to this. You should do what you think is really funny for your one-liner or your joke for your cow portrait. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to, with pencil, write your one-liner inside your word bubble. And the reason you're doing it in pencil is because that way you can practice with a pencil and erase, because you want to make sure that all of it fits in there neatly and looks nice. All right, so once you're happy with how the writing looks, you're going to take your oil pastel, the same color that you used to outline your portrait, you're going to outline your word bubble with that. Then you're going to take one of the two colors from the body head area and fill in your word bubble. So you can see here, I took the green, and that's my word bubble color. I did not use the background color. Here, I took one of my two head body colors, pink, and made it my word bubble, not the background color. If you make it the same color as the background, then it will kind of disappear, and you don't want that. It's fun and funny, and you want to see it. So now you outline the pencil, you overwrite with your oil pastel the pencil outline of the word bubble, then you watercolor the inside and let it dry. Once it dries, you take a black color pencil and you overwrite your writing that is the joke, and your word bubble actually it's not quite done. You have to take your scissors and cut it out, and cut on the outside of the oil pastel outline that you've done, so there's no white showing. All right, so the next part is attaching your word bubble to your portrait. And you can see you want to put it in a space where there's you want to put it where there's enough space, and it can overlap your cow, it can overlap the background, and it can go off the page if it needs to. But how you want to attach it is you don't want to just glue the whole thing on and be flat. It'll be more interesting if you have it pop out a little bit. So the way to do that is, I said you needed a piece of goose paper. Here's a piece of goose paper, and remember, goose is good, G, good, on, O, 1, O, S, side, good on one side. So it's a piece of scratch paper that one side got used and you're not using the other side. So you do about 3 inches by 1 inch piece of paper. And you fold it in half. And then you fold the edges in a little bit. So it ends up looking like that. And you're going to put glue on the big side, and that is what you're going to attach your bubble to. Painted side out, of course. And so you're going to glue this onto this like that. So now I have these attached with glue. Then I'm going to put glue on my flaps, and that is what sticks to my portrait, like so. And what ends up happening is your bubble pops out a little bit because of those flaps. I think that's everything for our Burping Bessy portraits. You can give your cow your own name and your own title, and I can't wait to see them.